Okay, this is Kim Foglia's Endocrine System PowerPoint, narrated by Dr. Meade. This is some of which we've already gone over in class this year. This is 2013, but I just wanted to start from the beginning to give you the basics again and just show you an overview of the glands again, the basic glands of the endocrine system. We'll go over all of these throughout it, but just keep coming back to these because make sure you know all of these glands and what hormones they produce by the end. I'm having a little trouble with the new program I'm using, so bear with me here. Okay, so I'm going to go through this part really quickly, and I left the AP Bio textbook at school, so I'm using the one I used to teach my college class, so bear with me if I don't have the things lined up exactly. But growth hormones obviously are used for growth. They're chemical messages from one part to another. So this comes back to basic chemical signaling, and we went through this in class. They were talking about basic cell signaling in order to stimulate metabolism and growth, to signal mitosis and maturation. And hopefully you can see reproduction. I don't know if everything's being hidden down there the way I'm seeing it. Okay, so when we talk about regulation and communication, we're relying on two main systems, the endocrine system and the nervous system. We have already talked about the nervous system in terms of homeostasis and regulation. The endocrine system has ductless glands. So we're secreting chemical signals directly into blood. We're not requiring vessels to do so. We go directly to the tissue. We go right to the target cells using receptor proteins, and it has a slow, long-lasting response. Whereas the nervous system is using a system of neurons, and it's using electrical and chemical signals to release the neurotransmitters to target the tissue. And we talked all about how synapses are traveling along and moving along the myelin sheath here to go across the synaptic gap here to the next neuron. And with the endocrine system, we are not requiring this kind of traveling. We are not requiring action potentials. We are going right to the tissue. So with the nervous system, it is fast and short-lasting response, where endocrine system is slow and long-lasting response. And that's a significant difference. But both are about regulation. Okay, so this basic picture, it seems silly to compare them to me because they're so different, but the axon here is dumping off its neurotransmitters, being released by the neuron, being captured by these receptor proteins, and endocrine gland, and here you can see these, these are not ducts, that these are glandular tissue dropping off the hormones being carried by the blood right into the tissue, into the receptor proteins, into the target cells to have this long-lasting response. Okay, and that's a lock and key system. And, oops, okay, so even though we're talking about cells that are carrying particular signal type chemicals to receptor cells, they're having really different kind of results. Okay, even though we're talking about hitting target cells with signals, we're having totally different kinds of response. Okay, so I paused there for a second, so moving on here. The classes of hormones, we have protein-based hormones, lipid-based hormones. So the protein-based hormones are polypeptides, small proteins, insulin and ADH, glycoproteins, large proteins, and carbohydrates, FSH and LH, amines, modified amino acids, epinephrine, and melatonin. And before we move on to the lipid-based hormones, let's just talk about what these are for a second. So, I'm trying to remember what page the chart is on in your book. But ADH is anti-diuretic hormone, or vasopressin. So I learned it as vasopressin, but the more common name now is anti-diuretic hormone. So it helps regulate blood osmolarity. So osmolarity, like osmosis. So ADH is one of several hormones that regulates kidneys. So it helps increase water retention in the kidneys, so it decreases urine volume. So you can imagine that this is involved in maintaining proper blood pressure. So without this, if we don't have the right blood pressure, if we don't have proper kidney function, we can't live. So if you have kidneys holding back too much or leaking too much, things are not going to work. So that's ADH. And you probably heard about insulin before, because you know about insulin in relationship to what? So think about insulin for 1 second. What do you know about insulin? You can hear my puppy in the background. My puppy is wanting her belly rubbed, but she's out of my reach. So I'm going to pause a second so you can get her in the belly rubbing position. Hang on. Okay, I think I'm back in the right place. Sorry about that. Hormone, which I learned as vasopressin, and so insulin is still and it lowers the blood glucose level, and it's regulated by the glucose level in blood. So then we have glycoproteins. We've talked about what glyco stands for. Glyco stands for carbohydrates, so we're large proteins plus a carbohydrate, FSH and LH. So FS, follicle stimulating hormone, which stimulates the production of ova and sperm, and it's regulated by the hypothalamus, ovaries, and testes, which is also regulated epinephrine and melatonin. We've talked about epinephrine before as fight or flight reaction. Epinephrine being fight or flight, kind of get you going stuff that gets you move in a fight or flight reaction. I can't for the life of me find what is it right now. Oh, never mind. It's regulated by the nervous system. It raises blood glucose levels and increases metabolic activities, obviously. And melatonin regulates sleep. It's produced by the nervous system. Lipid-based hormones. Hello. Come on. Lipid-based hormones. Lipid-based hormones we've talked about before. There they are. Which are the steroids, the sex hormones, aldosterone. Back up. Anyway, estrogen and testosterone. They disappeared there, but we'll talk about them again in a second. So how do hormones act on target cells? So there's a slight delay here. Lipid-based hormones, hydrophobic and lipid-soluble. We talked about this in class. So if they're hydrophobic, right, and we're talking about the phospholipid bilayer, they diffuse across the cell membrane and enter the cell. They bind to the nucleus, and they bind to DNA as transcription factors. And remember when, and I'm not sure if you can still actually see me, but they bind as transcription factors, and then things get going, and it turns on genes. that's kind of the opposite of being a protein-based hormone, where you're hydrophilic and not lipid soluble, and you're going to be stuck in the cell membrane. So you can't diffuse across the cell membrane, and you're going to be sitting in the receptor proteins in the cell membrane, and you're going to trigger a secondary messenger pathway. I'm going to give you examples of this stuff in a second. And you're going to activate internal cellular responses. So let me just back up and review for a second. I wish I could easily back up to different pictures that I wanted to look at, but it's just not that easy making a screencast here. But if you can, when we put it all together at the end, I want you to keep in mind that we're talking about the endocrine system, but the reason we compared it to the nervous system in the beginning is because some of the things, the hormones that we're talking about, are beginning in the brain, and some of the hormones that we're talking about are beginning elsewhere. So some of the hormones we're talking about are being triggered by the brain, but then metabolized and then function elsewhere. So remember that when we talked about in chapter 11 cell signaling in the hormone pathway, we were talking about long distances, but we might have talked about having a signal begin in one place and finish far away. So keep in mind that a signal may begin in one place and finish far away, and so that these signals can seem complex, but you have to spend some time really memorizing what they actually are. And so spend time with the big picture, but realize that some of this, because it's still anatomy, does involve memorization. It's not like you realized with me, I had to say for a second, wait a second, I've got to remember what the heck that hormone does, because it's not like all of them just are stuck in my brain forever, because I don't use them every day. So you are going to have to commit some of them to memory in order to have them be there for next week. Uh-oh, something just went wrong. I think I might have lost. Nope, we're still good. I just had a warning on my desk. Okay, I think we're good. Okay, I'm only going to let these videos go for 15-minute segments, so I'm going to go to one more slide, and then we're going to go to a part 2, just so they don't get too tedious and crazy. I hope you're still with me and not asleep. Okay, moving on. Okay, so here's the action of a steroid hormone, and the example that I used in class was that if you were going through puberty and you were going to start growing, say, armpit hair. So here is say it was a testosterone, and here's a little protein carrier, and here's a steroid hormone. In this case, it's testosterone, and it's being carried, and it's a lipid, and oops, I'm pointing at the screen as if that's helpful for you, which it absolutely is not. So it's going to, it's a lipid, so it's like, woo, and it goes right through, and then it's going to go inside the nucleus where it binds to the DNA as a transcription factor, and it says, because it's a transcription factor, it says, hey, start transcription, yo, and it starts transcription, and that says, since it says start transcription, it says start transcription, and so it starts making lots of messenger RNA. And when it starts making lots of messenger RNA, it starts making lots of proteins, and in this case, the protein being made is a protein that's a whole bunch of keratin to make a whole bunch of hair. And eventually this hair is going to be secreted as a whole bunch of armpit hair, because there happened to be a bunch of testosterone in a hair cell, say, that happened to be an underarm hair, because we were talking about the onset of puberty. Okay, so that was the action of, in this case, a steroid hormone of testosterone at puberty. And so that's going to end just this first section of endocrine system at 15 minutes. Okay, so that's the end of part 1. Sorry for the choppiness of it as I adjusted to this.